We've gotten a lot of questions regarding our home birth. That video is actually pretty popular, and we've decided to come in here and address some of the questions that we've received, because a lot of things can go wrong in a home birth, and a lot of things do go not wrong, but they go the way that you didn't plan it, right? Just like any other birth. So first, I'd like to clarify that there is no actual difference between a home birth and a hospital birth. You have very, very qualified midwives that are assisting you in a home birth. And in the case of our home birth, we had a plan B, super well designed, in place and ready to go. So at all points, we knew that should anything go in an unexpected way that could not be handled at home, we could be in a hospital within a few minutes and handle the situation as it happened.
We were definitely well prepared. One thing that we weren't as prepared, I think. I thought I could do everything. Certain things like bring out the hose for the tub and all these things. And because, I'm the father, I had my mind completely just went somewhere else into taking care of her. And so all these little things that I thought I could do, I was like, oh my gosh, I need help.
So I think the one advice that we would give everyone would be to prepare both of you. We really wanted to both be in the birth. We wanted the birth to be like a family affair as opposed to just me birthing and him standing on the side, which is one of the main reasons we had a home birth to begin with.
Exactly.
But one advice that we would give is that if you're planning on doing a home birth, try to have everything that you can have already planned and settled and ready to go beforehand, and have hands to help you along with this. To give you an idea, it was the two of us, my two midwives, my doula, who was also our photographer, and my brother and sister who came to help set up, and we still were completely lost at the beginning.
Running around. Yeah, we were
Had my brother and sister not been there, and had they not been able to help set up, it would have been a clusterfuck. That's right off the bat, because so much happens and there are so many emotions, and especially for a first-time parent, we don't know how long it takes to get the baby out. As a woman who's about to give birth for the first time, I had no idea how much pain, how often, how many contractions, how many hours, when they push and start. You have no idea, right? You think you read books, you hear from people, but if you're watching this right now and you're pregnant, you should know by now that pregnancy and baby advice online is never just one answer.
Yeah.
So, and it's true. It's so different for everyone. It's impossible. And it's impossible to predict what could happen. I remember, 2 days before we gave birth, my aunt called me, and I was almost 42 weeks pregnant, and she was like, so, where are you gonna give birth? And we were like, at home. But she kept feeling because it was so late, it was safer to do it at the hospital. But we never felt that it was safer to do it at the hospital than at home. Yeah. But we also were very confident in the team that we had set up. And
we had a fantastic team. And the other thing is that we planned it. I'm so happy we did it at home birth, because when the baby was born, it was during COVID-19. So there was a big chance that I wasn't going to be a part of it at all. So because we did this, it gave us a full opening to everybody that we wanted, everything that we needed, and so we had it well planned.
What could go wrong in a home birth? Or any other birth, really. So what went wrong for us was that, well, first of all, my contractions were happening for almost 2 entire weeks by the time I gave birth. So when I called my doula and photographer, who lived really, really close by, and when she arrived, I was like, can you try to track the contractions? Because I wasn't sure, we weren't sure, how long the contractions were lasting. We thought it was one thing, then we thought it was another. I was having contractions for 2 weeks, right? So at that point we were like, is this it or is this not it? When we woke up at 3:30 in the morning, it was very clear that the baby was coming today, because the pain was unbearable, and I was like, it can't get worse than this or I'm gonna die. But I didn't know, I wasn't sure, and I was already in too much pain. So my photographer and doula, Allison, who by the way is amazing, she started tracking it, and she was like, oh my god, she freaked out, because it was okay, you're giving birth and your midwives are not here. And we lived about 45 minutes away from our midwives, not counting traffic. So she called everyone, and everybody started kind of making their way to us. But I remember I was outside in super intense labor, and nothing was set up. Nothing. I had no pool set up. Nothing was set up. And one of the biggest things we had going on was that we were one of the biggest considerations we had was the flies. There was
Yeah.
a huge fly problem in Florida. It was very hot. She was born the 5th of June. It was hot and humid and fly infested. And I was like, I don't want to give birth with a bunch of flies on me.
Yeah, I had traps, I had all types of mechanisms to get these flies out of there.
We bought this like super high end like fly
Did
trap
not work.
things that ended up getting every insect but the flies, and it was just a mess. But I have this vivid image of me walking around the deck trying to like handle the pain and the nervousness of the moment, and my brother like just setting up this like he just left and really quickly bought a bunch of those like little sticky fly trap things, and he was hanging them all over the deck so that they wouldn't be like it was like the
Yeah, it
ghettoest
was-
thing ever.
You
But
don't see it in the video, and nor did we put it like really so close to the
yeah, it
where
was
she
not
giving
close to
birth,
me, but still.
yeah.
But I think that actually ended up helping a lot because, and then we had a fan, which luckily we had a fan because we used a fan throughout the entire birth except for the end when she was coming out, and that actually diverted the flies from me. But that was definitely something that I did not expect. So when we planned a home birth, I was never thinking, because the thing is we wanted an outside home birth. So when we planned that, I was never thinking there's going to be a bunch of bugs on me. And that's something that you definitely should keep in consideration when you do plan your own home birth.
And I think the measures that we took kept enough flies away from the actual
Until the end.
birth, until the end.
So all the blood started coming
Yeah,
out
yeah,
and the baby
yeah,
and all that stuff, and it was like, oh god.
And the cool thing that I actually didn't expect, the midwives were extra prepared. They had IVs at one point. Maria, once she gave birth, started to bleed a little bit more than was.
I didn't
normal.
start to bleed a little bit more. I ripped because she was large, and my midwife had to go and help her out at the end, and that created that I just couldn't stretch, my body couldn't stretch enough, and I ripped, and so that obviously created a bunch of more blood than we were hoping for. But my midwife was like this. She was like, okay, you have a little bit more blood than I would like to see, so we're gonna put an IV on you, and we're gonna like just keep a close eye on you and see how this moves. If it keeps on bleeding, we're gonna take it to, like, everything was like so planned. And so it's really funny because my midwife was extremely hands off. Like, at no point did I have somebody telling me when to push, how to push, where to go, what to do. It was very like empowering. The whole thing was very much, you as a woman, you as a mother know what to do. Your body knows what to do. You're made for this. You got this. But when it was finally done, when the moment came where like I needed assistance to get the baby out, and then when the baby was already out and other things medically that needed to happen, she was like, okay, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, la la la. And I never once, not in my entire pregnancy, not doing at any point of my birth, did I ever even have like a fleeting thought of, oh my gosh, this would have been better somewhere else. And I think that's my biggest recommendation is however you decide to do your birth and whoever you decide to do it with, just make sure you trust that person, because when you have that trust in whoever's helping you in the most important day literally of your life, I don't know, that made it really easy for me, because I had no confidence that I knew how to birth. Obviously, I had never done it before. I had no confidence that I could go through an entire home birth unmedicated, right? And I remember it was like 11 in the morning and I was done. I was like, if I faint right here from the pain and I wake up, with a baby in my hands, I'll be fine. Like, I don't care if they cut me open, I don't care what happens, I'm done. And my midwife knew better, so they kept doing things like bringing agave to give me a little bit more of a kick. They had already told us to freeze some fruits like grapes, which are highly hydrating and also sweet and give you a little kick. And all these things were in place slowly, and they were told to me slowly throughout my pregnancy, so that at that day we didn't have to worry. But even so, I think the most important thing is to have extra hands on deck and be extra prepared. Yeah. So we prepared things like a hospital bag in case we needed to go to the hospital. But the fly traps needed to have in place the day before, I think.
Yeah.
Which of course you cannot prepare for this because you don't know when the baby's coming.
And it was actually pretty crazy because you mentioned that things weren't set up when you were actually feeling like you were going to give birth. But the amount of time that it took us to set up was really quick.
Right.
For what we had to just fill up the little thing, the pool with air.
Well, we had a bigger setup than most people would
Yeah.
have, because most people have a home birth inside, and so because ours was outside, we had a whole mattress, like a whole bed set up outside. We had specific colors that we wanted to be there. For me, it was very important that everything looked very clean, and that I was only looking at nature and not like random crap in the yard. And I don't know, all these little details, right? So it might be different for everybody else, but we had a bucket with all of the birth things that the midwife had already told us to prepare. And we had a pretty decent idea of everything else we needed. But even so, it took about 2 hours, I would say.
Yeah, what were some of the things that we really needed? I know that one of the things that we really needed were the pads.
Right. So we needed. I mean, we did a whole other video on everything you need for a home birth, and that's gonna be on our IGTV. But basically, the midwives will tell you about a week before, or actually not a week before, like a month before the birth. They give you a list of everything you need to have. And then of course you get it set up and prepared, and it's kind of very much like setting up your own hospital bag. You just get it ready to go. But I think it's one of those things, since you don't know what you're preparing for because you've never done it. It's like if I had another birth and we were gonna do it the same way, it would go so much different. I wouldn't say it will go smoother because you never know that, but it will go differently because I would know what to prepare.
Yeah.
Whereas this time around, even though we had a list of things and whatnot, I think that we could have been a little bit more organized in terms of like what everybody was going to be in charge of doing, what everybody was going to be taking care of. Like maybe we could have told my brother already, hey, you're going to be in charge of the flight department, and my sister, you're going to take care of the water, things like that. So
there was, just like in any situation, there were some things that we didn't see, but overall we had confidence. Not once did I ever feel like, oh my gosh, we're going to have to do some drastic measures at all. So I was very confident, and I was very confident in our team. And I think, like she mentioned before, that's one of the things that you have to make sure. Be confident in your team, be confident in yourself, and be confident in the overall turnout of everything.
And I think another issue that people encounter when it comes to planning something like this is that because we're so used to seeing births happening a certain way, like let's say in a hospital with doctors and all that stuff, we automatically assume that all births need that. And the reality is that being pregnant is not a sickness, and giving birth is not a procedure that like needs to be done in a hospital. Generally speaking, obviously there are complications. There are people that do require that amount of assistance. But if you have an uncomplicated, a pregnancy, most people are able to do a natural birth. And with the advancement of medicine and everything we know about childbirthing, it really is not that. I don't know. It did not feel at all for us like it was risky. Like it did not feel like we were taking a larger risk than if it would have been anywhere. I do say that I wish I would have known how long it goes for. And
how long was it? It was about...
It was forever. It was forever. But the thing is, these things because of course these things. There's a million videos to talk about it. There's information online. There are people that tell you how long it lasts. But because most people give birth in a hospital and they get induced or they get the epidural, they don't know how long the pain lasts anymore. And so when you're doing a natural birth, I started having horrible contractions, like horrible to the point where I was like, okay, baby's coming, at around 3:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
And then by 6 or 7 in the morning, it was like, okay, yeah, we're done. Like I was 10 centimeters dilated kind of thing, right? So it lasted from around there all the way till 2:42 p.m. when she was born.
And that's another question that I kind of saw, is that a lot of people don't know when they're going to give birth, and right away our midwives and everything told us, you're going to know. And I think this is one of those instances where like you knew.
This is one of those things where like the same as before, where I was like, oh, like you never know how long it's gonna take, and you look online and it takes a while, but you don't believe it because you don't know, you don't have a point of reference. So like I kept having horrible contractions, and I kept asking my midwife like, is this it? And I remember one time we were on a walk and I had this contraction that was literally 4 minutes long. And I texted her, I was like, this is crazy. Like I'm walking and it's been 4 minutes, and she's like, no, it hasn't. And I was like, oh, how do you know if it is or isn't? She's like, you will know, I promise you will know. And I remember I kept like putting on Instagram stories like, okay, I fell asleep, but I had this horrible contractions. Is it coming today? And everybody was like, no, if you're posting on Instagram, it's not coming. And I was like, oh man, like how would I know? You will know. The pain will let you know. I woke up that day at 3 a.m. and I was like, oh my God. Like, you know, the earth is breaking inside of me and something is coming out. Like, so this little girl was coming out.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But so we've totally deviated from the question of our video, which was what I wish I would have known about a home birth. I wish I would have trusted more myself that I would know, because I prepared and freaked out and panicked for so long, and that was valuable time that I could have used for, you know, for resting and getting ready for it. I think the main thing about having a home birth is to expect that things can go wrong, and by wrong I mean differently than you planned.
Yeah.
So we planned a water birth and we could not have a water birth because she pooped in you know, inside, and that was okay. And had I been fixated on that water birth, that probably would have thrown me off and created a larger problem than it was, right? But because I trusted my team, and I trusted in the process, and I knew that things could go differently than I planned, we kind of just let it all ride, and I ended up pushing her out, you know, on the mattress instead of in the water, you know, which was fine as well. And I remember I used to always watch all these like things about how it's better to squat and birth squatting. Well, let me tell you, it is painful to squat when you're 75 months pregnant with a belly this big and like trying to push the baby out. So like for me, that was not an option.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't think you were gonna give birth in that way on the mattress.
I
like,
gave birth laying
back.
down like I would have in a hospital.
Yeah, it was very interesting because I didn't think it was gonna happen like that.
Right.
I totally thought it was gonna be a whole different experience. Like, oh my gosh, okay.
Yeah, I kept thinking I was gonna be standing up and the baby was gonna come out or
Yeah.
something, you know. But it didn't happen that way. I was totally exhausted by the time the baby came out, like completely exhausted. Like I don't think I could have stood and pushed at the same time. You know what I mean? And we tried everything, and I walked around, I sat at the toilet, I laid down sideways and you know, like in doggy style, and the water and a million other things, but it just didn't happen, right? And you have to be okay with knowing that your process, your journey, your story, your birth story, it's gonna be different than anybody else's, right? Because that's okay, and as long as your baby comes out healthy,
That's all that matters.
that's all that matters. Like, and that was our thing, right? Like I remember I was FaceTiming my cousin when they were sewing me up down there after I ripped, and she was like, does it not hurt you that you're being sewn up? I was like, listen, my baby's here and she's happy and she's healthy. I don't care about anything else. And it's true.
You know, it's one of the things of home birthing that I thought was very unique. Okay, there's a part where she took out the placenta, and she showed us like exactly the tree of life and all this stuff, and where all the nutrients are, and how it works. And I thought that was like, you'll never get that experience in a hospital. You know, kind of that hands-on thing, and I thought that was very unique, and I didn't expect that. But it's one of those things where you basically, you know, that's what they know, and that's what they are, you know, basically showing you. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
I'd say that overall, I would recommend home birthing, natural home birthing to everyone. I had a realization the other day, and I know this may seem really crazy, but I had an unmedicated birth, which was a wild thing because it is very, very painful. But I think the pain of childbirth prepares you in a way for the pain of motherhood. And I don't mean to say that motherhood is a painful experience, because it isn't. There's much more pleasure than there is pain. But there are many uncomfortable situations that will happen and that you will be unprepared for because you're new at it, right? And so for me, both the physical and emotional pain of labor were simply a very, very slight preparation for what has come afterwards. And I've had a fantastic journey, I think, in comparison to a lot of mothers. I haven't struggled to breastfeed. My baby slept through the night almost entirely until month 2.5. You know, so we've been lucky in many respects of things that like usually, you know, go wrong or are difficult to deal with when the babies first come join us in our families. But even so, I think childbirth was a preparation of sorts. And had I given birth with no pain, I don't know that I would have been okay at coping with all the things that happened afterwards, like the lack of sleep, the physical pain of recovering from childbirth, which by the way is crazy. Like, you know, I expected, because I was having a home birth and a natural birth, that, you know, and I had all these exercises, and I squatted and walked throughout my entire pregnancy, and I did hypnobirthing meditations, and I was like, well, I'm good to go, nothing's gonna happen, I'm gonna be walking the next day. Well, I ended up ripping, and it was a pretty decent rip, and I basically was in bed rest for 2 entire weeks after birth, right? And so once again, a lot of things can go wrong, a lot of things can go differently than you planned, and I think your ability to be prepared for that is what's gonna set you up for success or failure. Because and I wasn't prepared, by the way. I was incredibly bummed out to have to be basically bedridden for 2 weeks. And
yeah, that's something you didn't expect.
I wasn't prepared for that. I did not. I assumed that, because I was worried about being able to give birth naturally. Once I knew that, okay, everything is great, your pregnancy is great, your baby's great, she's in position, you're giving birth naturally, I assumed everything else was great. And that's not the case. I had a great, you know, labor, and a short labor by the definitions of first time moms, but even so it was extremely exhausting. Even so, she did not fit, and I ended up ripping, and that ended up causing a bigger problem. And then I spent about almost 12 weeks. I was bleeding postpartum, or not bleeding like, you know, gushing out blood, but like spotting for almost
it was
almost 12 weeks. So like, I was finally clear completely at like week, I think 11 or 10 after birth, because at week 6 or so it went away, but then it came back.
You couldn't move, you couldn't do a bunch of things that, you know, normally you could do after birth.
That a lot of women are able to do, yeah.
Yeah, so I think for you it did affect you in that sense, because you had to stay bedridden.
Yeah.
You know, for a while after, and you didn't expect that. You were like, we're gonna walk every day, we're gonna go outside, we're gonna go to the beach
I had my
every
stroller
day.
set up to take my baby on a stroller walk every single day of life after she was born, and he was like, nope, can't walk.
Yeah. So those are the type of things that you gotta plan ahead.
Yeah. A lot of things could go wrong, but I think the main takeaway is that if you are planning on doing something like that, I think that aside from getting yourself, you know, well informed and prepared, it is a good idea to also consider that things could go differently than you planned them, and to be okay with it. I think the beauty of choosing something, naturally, natural like that, like a natural birth, is accepting that natural things happen the way that they want to happen, not always the way you plan, and that this is okay.
Right. No, that's right.
Yes, it's okay.
Yes.
So even though we had a few things go differently than we planned, and even though, you know, we ended up having to put an IV on me like at home, and that I ripped, and that ended up having to sew me stitches. By the way, when the stitching was gonna happen, the fan had already been turned off because she was born already, and we didn't want to, like, you know, make her cold. So all the flies came to me. So like my midwife was like, let's put you inside and sew you inside, because, like, you know, I feel like I'm in Haiti on a mission or something. And it was pretty bad, you know, with the flies. So like, all these things that I didn't even think were gonna be that big of a deal ended up being a big, you know, bothersome deal, I guess. And you just have to adapt. At the end, I think what really, really matters the most is that you are comfortable in your choices, because that kind of confidence is what's gonna push you through, you know, in the 11th hour when you're pushing something out of your vagina. And that your baby comes out healthy. At the end of the day, if your baby comes out healthy, that is all that matters. I remember when my midwife told me basically the plan, after she had been born. She's like, okay, you're bleeding a little bit more than I want you to, so I'm gonna put an IV on you, we're gonna check you up, and if things keep going this way, we might have to move you to the hospital, you know. And I was like, oh my god. You know, but luckily none of that happened, so
it's good. So overall, successful birth. Some things that we didn't expect happen. It's okay. But
that is part of it. That, I think, is part of not just birth, but just life in general. And I think the more you plan for the unexpected, the more successful you will be at being happy with your experience.
So home birthing.
Yes, we definitely approve, and that's definitely the way we would go if we had another baby, which we don't think is gonna happen. But if it did, that's the way we would do it.
We'll see.
So, Don't forget to subscribe if you like our content, and let us know what else you'd like to know. We love answering these questions, and especially if we can, motivate or help any of you make the decision to do things that align better with yourself. So thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Bye.